Hi, welcome to episode 180 of your favorite daily podcast, A Couple of Things, a podcast about things. Today, I'm going to talk about democratization in UX. And what does it mean for us? So, something that has been on my mind for the past couple of weeks, months even, is about democratization in UX, because that's often where I've heard the phrase, and also what it means for us as UX professionals. Today there was Amsterdam UX Camp Amsterdam, which is basically an on-conference type thing. So everyone comes, and then if you want to give a talk, you pitch it in the morning, and then people vote, and then they create the schedule based on the people whose talks most people were interested in, and then you give a or talk, workshop, or discussion. And so I pitched a discussion on democratization in UX. What does it mean for us? The possible inevitability of democratization in UX. What does it mean for us as UX professionals? And I've been thinking about this for a while. And the conversation was quite interesting. There were like about 8 or 10 people, and we discussed this topic. And one of the things that somebody said that I found very interesting is that you actually don't have a choice. That they hate the phrase democratization because it sounds like there's a choice in it, but there's no choice. You either choose to do it or it will just happen. And that's where, when I first had the idea of the inevitability of democratization, that's also what I was thinking, because I've actually only worked as the only UX researcher, except for one company, for about 2 years. Every other time I've worked as the only UX researcher, most times the first UX researcher that company was interacting with. And it's inevitable. Like, there's just so much to be done. People are already doing research in some form, or what they believe to be research. They are collecting customer feedback in some way from somewhere. It's already happening. It may not be being done systematically or with the right skills, the right processes, and all of those things, but it is happening. And as a solo UX professional in a company, it's just like there's no way, you can't get around democratization. And I really understood where that person was coming from when they said it sounds like we have a choice, but you don't. You just have to do it. And you can make the argument for, but you can try and convince the company, show the value. But while all of that convincing and showing of value is happening, there's research that needs to be done. There are people who are doing research, some doing it badly, that you need to train, provide resources, tools, and guidelines and guardrails on how they can actually do it. So that was one of the first things that came up in that conversation, that what is democratization? Is it and lots of people gave different examples, like, on a particular team, only the designers only do unmoderated tests, and there's guidelines and tutorials and trainings and things that they have to do to be able to do it. In some other organization, it looks some other way. And that might be familiar to you if you work in the UX space, where democratization happens in the sense that a particular other role is trained on a very specific type of research approach or research method, and is very specific method and a specific part of that method. So not even the whole thing. Maybe they don't even do the analysis, they just do the session or something. So those kinds of things. So that was one part of the conversation. But something else, and many of the questions I had, because like democratization of skills is a thing that always happens. And one of the things that I think about often is like tools like WordPress, Webflow, Squarespace, that allow you to create a website. Anybody can create a website with any of these tools, but people are still hiring web developers and web designers to build websites for them, for example. So because everyone can technically do something, doesn't mean that everyone will do it or everyone wants to do it, right? So that's just like one side. And then there's also the example. Another thing that came up in this conversation was AI, because like people use AI tools. There are AI tools that can now allow you generate an interface, and generative AI tools can also help you with like creating research plans and those kinds of things. Now I'm not talking about whether they can do it well or whether they do it well or not. That's not the point of this. But there are these tools, and I'm going to come back to that later. But so that came up in the conversation, and I was thinking about how when ATMs came about, it was like, we don't need bank tellers anymore. But obviously that's not true, because there are banks still have bank tellers, especially in some parts of the world. Then also, something that I just had something and I lost it just now. Then another example someone gave in the discussion group was about the printing press. Everybody felt like, oh, now that there's printing press, like we can't protect knowledge. There's no there was like anybody could just read or whatever. But obviously that didn't change. And a similar fear would be like, oh, if you are able to write down stories and people don't have to listen to the stories, or anybody still like watch go to the theater, but the theater still exists, right? So people still go to the theater, people still watch plays, even though you can read a book for entertainment, but people still go to watch plays. So there's all of that. But on the flip side, there's also, and I've talked about this on the previous episode of the podcast, scenarios where technological advancement leads to the erasure of certain kinds of jobs. Like, it will happen. So yeah, let's pause here. Hi, thanks for listening so far. Just to pop in to say, please send me questions. I'm running out of things to talk about, so send me questions or suggestions. The link to do that is in the description box of the episode. Also, subscribe. Thanks. Okay, let's get back into the episode. And like I talked about in the episode on AI will take our jobs, people often say that, oh no, people want to work with people. You can make the case, the significant difference between a researcher or a UX person or whatever and using an AI tool is that the AI tool cannot make the connections that a person will, and so on and so forth. And I don't disagree with any of those things. But my thing is, the question that I have that I still don't have the answer to, and is I want to encourage all of us who are UX people, and even whatever role you are in outside of UX even, is it's not about whether the AI tools can do our jobs as good as we can or better than we can. That's not the question. The question is, do the people who are making the decisions about who to hire, what kind of roles to hire, and so forth, do they believe that the AI tools can do our jobs as good as we can or even better? And if the answer is yes, they are going to replace us with AI tools, whether they can actually do the job or not. If they are sufficiently convinced that AI tools or can do the job, or a PM can do a UX researcher's job and they don't need to hire a UX researcher, they will not hire so many UX researchers. And when I say democratization is inevitable, it's from that perspective. It's from the perspective of like, as we've all seen, the one thing that all the tech companies, the majority, let me not say all, majority of tech companies are doing, especially the big ones and the ones that everybody talks about, we know that they don't care about like customer value, blah, blah, blah. It's shareholder value, and what they care about is cutting costs. And if somebody comes to say, oh, there's this AI tool that would replace your 7-person developer team or 7-person UX team and make it just one person, whether that tool is as effective as they need it to be or not, it doesn't matter to them, because the only thing you're hearing is save cost. And what does that mean for us as UX professionals? What does that mean for how we talk about our work? What does that mean for how we quote unquote show our value? What does that mean for the kind of work that we do? And people don't want to acknowledge this. We want to live in this bubble where it's like, well, AI cannot replace humans because humans are humans and we're special. Yes, but in the capitalist world that we live in, it doesn't matter. What matters is what is the perception of the value that we have. And if people believe that, oh, a PM, for example, can do research, so what is the justification for hiring a researcher? And those are the questions that we need to answer. If PMs have been doing wireframes since I started in UX about 7 or 8 years ago, and PMs have been doing wireframes since then. Probably even before then, but that was when I started being aware of the space. So for as long as I've been in UX, I've known PMs who do wireframes, and some of whom even do actual high fidelity prototypes in Figma and like. And with Figma's config conference recently and all the AI magic tools that they released, again, you can say we can limit democratization to a specific method or a specific tool. But if research is a skill that can be learned and UX skills can be learned, what stops a company from saying, oh, if the PM can learn how to do customer interviews, then they can also learn how to do all these other UX research skills. Or if the designer can learn how to do usability tests, they can learn how to do all these other things. So why do we need to hire a team of UX researchers? Or why do we need to hire a team of designers? Or why do we need to hire even a team of engineers or developers? Because there is quote unquote AI developers as well. These are the questions we should be asking ourselves. How do we make sure that at the end of all of these evolutions and these changes, and how our jobs are being thought about, how do we make sure that we are still standing? What does it look like for us next as UX professionals? And these are the questions that I've been thinking about. And yes, I'm talking specifically about UX here, but it could apply to many other kinds of jobs and many other kinds of roles. So after my session, the discussion session on the topic, I and a couple of other people who were in it, we kept on discussing, and we started talking about other areas. Like, would you prefer for a robot doctor to do, a robot surgeon or a person surgeon? Would you prefer a robot hairdresser or a person hairdresser? Would you prefer a robot cook or a person cook? And all of those things, because we can say that, oh, the person, but at the end of the day, most people are driven by money. Corporations are driven by money. And when people have to choose, they're most likely going to choose the more quote unquote cost efficient option. And we can talk about how the research, the value, because again, in UX, it's always hard to see the immediate effect of badly done UX. It's not something that you often see immediately, of badly done research, badly done UX processes. If someone cooks food in a bad way, you can immediately taste it and see it. If someone builds a house and it's not properly done, you can immediately see it. Like, the result is very immediate. The effect is immediate, but it's not the same for us. If it sometimes feels ephemeral, and so it's hard to make that connection. And what do we do in between that space where the bad effects of these quote unquote replacements are felt? How do we come before that point to say this is the value of the work? And even though all these tools give the appearance of doing the work, they are not. And it's not enough to just say it, because again, the CEO of this company, they do not care. What they care about is their bottom line. And if they feel like this tool helps their bottom line better, then they're going to go with it. I don't have the answer, evidently. These are just questions that I'm thinking about, and I'm inviting other people to also think about and to share their thoughts about it as well. So yeah, that was it for today's episode. Thank you for listening. Bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Couple of Things. If there was anything you found interesting or insightful, or you enjoyed the episode, please do share to someone or multiple people. Like, leave a comment, and definitely do subscribe and all the nice things. Bye.